The Colts have until Tuesday at 4 p.m. to cut the roster size down to 53. And I feel like I have a pretty good idea of who they're going to want to keep around and how they want to construct the team. Okay, and this time we're going to include the specialists. I forgot to do that last time. Okay, the offense gets 25, defense gets 25, and there are three specialists. Okay, so let's get in to the quarterbacks. Of course, Anthony Richardson, QB1, Gardner Minshew, QB2. Question is, do we keep Sam Ehlinger? And I do think Sam Ehlinger is going to be on the team. It just makes too much sense not to have him. Sure, he'll count against the 53, but he's not going to count against the 46 active players that you take into a game day. So keeping him as the emergency QB, it just makes sense. Keep him around. Kind of has the same play style as Anthony Richardson, right? You know, being able to run around and run the RPO system. So having him there is good. Hopefully, we don't end up in a position where he has to play. But I think keeping him around definitely something that is going to happen. So the Colts, for me, we're going to be taking three quarterbacks into the regular season. I also think we're going to be taking four running backs. Now, this is obviously subject to change. At the current moment, the Colts don't like any of the offers that they've gotten from the Miami Dolphins. And I know of at least one other team that's made an offer to the Colts, a serious offer to the Colts, but we haven't heard anything from that. So I'm assuming that offer was also rejected. So for the time being, Jonathan Taylor is on the team, and I expect him to be on the team at the start of the regular season. Whether he's playing or not is a totally different thing. If he's still on pup to start the year, then he's going to miss the first 4 weeks, I think it is. And that's for anybody he plays for. It doesn't matter whether he's on our team or not. If he starts the season on pup, he misses the first 4 weeks. Okay, but then behind him, it's Zach Moss. I think he's too good not to keep on the roster and not to get anything back from. Like, you can't just release Zach Moss and let somebody else have him. Okay. And then I think Kenyon Drake and Evan Hull are the other two running backs. And you're going to notice that I don't have Deion Jackson on this list. And honestly, I think it just makes sense this way. I know Deion Jackson's been here, but this is new coaching staff. New coaching staff is looking at what they have in front of them. And I feel like Kenyon Drake is clearly better than Deion Jackson. That's really what it comes down to. You need the talent to stay on the team. Like, we need as much talent as possible, especially in the running back department with everything going on with Jonathan Taylor, with the way the offense is going to run under Anthony Richardson. Having running backs that you know you can trust is going to be a powerful thing for the coaching staff. And I think they're going to be able to trust Kenyon Drake because Kenyon Drake's been doing it for so long, right? And you just drafted Evan Hull. He's looked pretty good. He can pass protect. It feels like all the factors factor in. He's at least going to be number 4 on the depth chart. Might not see a whole lot of him, but he's going to be on the team. So I feel like there are three concrete answers as fill-ins, right? Guys that are going to be on the team. Question is, who is the fourth one going to be? And it was either Deion Jackson or Kenyon Drake. In my opinion, it should be Kenyon Drake. Okay, but if we live in a world where Jonathan Taylor's not on the team, Deion Jackson and Kenyon Drake both make the team, and we trade Jonathan Taylor for draft picks. I don't know. I honestly don't know if we're going to get anybody in return for him. I'm going to try to have a video for you guys pretty soon on that whole situation and where I think he's going to go and what I think we could get back for him. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on to make sure you get notified when that video does come out. But until then, we're just going to assume Jonathan Taylor riding with us into the season. Okay, so then you go further than that. We have 6 wide receivers. Who am I deciding to keep? Okay, the top 4 we can all guess. Okay, Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Isaiah McKenzie. Then you look at the rest of the roster. Who else do we have a wide receiver to pick from? It's Mike Strawn, Rashad Perriman, James Washington, Amari Rogers, Jawan Winfrey, Tyler Adams, Vincent Smith, and DJ Montgomery. As much as I feel like we all want Mike Strawn to work out, I don't think it is. I think he's going to be released. He could end up back on the practice squad, but we'll just have to see. I don't think he's making a 53-man roster. Rashad Perriman hasn't been around. He's not going to be on the roster. James Washington doesn't feel like he's going to be on the roster. He got that one deep ball, so he has something to put on tape. But I don't think he's going to be on our roster. Then you have Amari Rogers and Jawan Winfrey. These are the two other wide receivers that I do think are going to be making the roster. Amari Rodgers has gotten the ball and he's gotten targets. So even when he's not getting the ball, he's at least getting looked at by the quarterbacks that are in the game. And I think what he's shown being able to play receiver and special teams, like his dual threat ability and being able to do multiple things, like he's going to make the team. It just makes sense to keep him in the building. Number 3 is going to stay a Colt this year. And then Juwan Winfrey. I feel like Juwan Winfrey is Mike Strawn, except he can actually do it in games. So it's really what that boils down to. It's a fresh face. He's younger. He's a big guy. He's athletic. So I think taking a chance on him and keeping him around and having him as a number 6 receiver for a little while, and if we need him, I think he's somebody that could step up if he really needed to. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see if he can continue to develop and see what he turns into. Obviously, we again have our big 4 for this season. But I think as a prospect for the future, Juwan Winfrey, the more I look into him, the more I think, as long as he can develop and continue to get better and learn from a guy like Reggie Wayne, he's a guy that could be a problem in the future. All right, so now we have the tight ends. Very interesting group. This is one that I was watching very closely through training camp, through the preseason games, especially in preseason game 3. I wanted to see what happened. And there were some things that happened that are kind of in line with what I thought we should be doing and what I think we're going to be doing. And Kylan Granson, obviously making the team. He plays with the starters. He's definitely making the team. I thought it was notable, though, that Drew Ogletree caught a pass from Anthony Richardson in that game, which means he was playing with the starters. And I love that. If you've been watching the channel already, you know that I've talked about how Drew Ogletree, we've talked with, there was so much buzz about him last year and then he got hurt. Now we get to see what it's like for Drew Ogletree to be in the game. And his first pass, it was cool. It wasn't anything special. It was just a routine play, quarterback to tight end. But he was open in the middle of the field and had some run after catch. And he is a giant dude. Okay. I think there ended up being 3 dudes that hit him and brought him down. So I really like Drew Ogletree. I'm excited about him. I think he's definitely making the team. And then it gets interesting. You start talking about Jelani Woods, Mo Alley Cox, and Will Mallory. And it just feels like it's time for Mo Alley Cox to go and try to find a new opportunity. It feels like this one's run out for him. We tried with him for a little while. He was a good blocking tight end, but during his time here, it was Jack Doyle was the guy. Then after that, we were hoping Mo would step up. That wasn't the case. We've had Kylan Granson and Jelani Woods on the roster with him, and we've all talked about them more than Mo Alley Cox, right? So for me, it's going to be Jelani Woods and Will Mallory making this team. It just makes sense. You have the Mo Alley Cox situation plus, all 4 of the tight ends on the roster have been drafted in the last 3 years. So it makes sense that Chris Ballard would want to keep these guys around. And I think all 4 of these guys at the current moment are more talented than Mo Alley Cox. Okay, so now to finish up the offense, it's the offensive line. If you've been keeping track, the offensive line gets 8 guys. There's kind of an exception here. Jake Witt is on the IR already, but I think they're going to keep him around. He just won't count as a roster spot. Danny Pinter, there's a good chance he ends up on the IR. Not quite sure what his exact injury is at this point, but he did get carted off in the game against Philadelphia. So I'm kind of thinking it might be an Achilles injury, but there's really no telling at this point. But I think if he ends up on IR, he's not going to count as a roster spot, so they'll keep him around. If he doesn't go on IR, I'm not sure if he makes the team anyways. Okay, because we all know who is making the team. You have Bernard Raymond, left tackle, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries at right guard, and Braden Smith at right tackle. And then the backups that I think and the depth I think we're going to keep is Arlington Hambright because he's versatile. He can play tackle and he can play guard. So it just makes sense. Keep him on the roster. You need that. And then Blake Freeland. He was drafted this year. So it just makes sense to keep him around, especially at right tackle. Braden Smith with what happened last year. And really, the last 2 years have been kind of down ever since he got paid. It hasn't been the best Braden Smith. So I can see a world where they want to find a way to move on from him at some point, especially if we're not winning a bunch of games this year. I could see Braden Smith getting traded before the trade deadline, so keeping Blake Freeland around is a good idea. Because as a rookie, there's going to be growing pains, but if that's a guy that they drafted, then it's a guy they like. And if it's a guy they like, you might as well see what happened. Braden Smith wasn't a first round pick either. He was really good for the first 4 or 5 years of his career. Okay, then the last lineman I have as keeping is Wesley French. And I think the combination of guys that I have as keeping gives us, versatility with one guy on one side of the line and then you keeping backups for the other side of the line. What do we do for backup center? I honestly don't have an answer for you there. Maybe that, you slide Will Fries in and French plays, or maybe Arlington Hambright can go to center. I don't know what the answer would be there, but I assume that this is the decision that's going to be made. If I'm Shane Steichen and his coaching staff, this is what I would do. It creates a complicated situation, especially with Ryan Kelly's injury history, but I feel like this is the best thing for this current iteration of the Colts offensive line. Okay, so that finishes up the offense. Now let's look at the defense. Okay, I want to run through the starters real quick and then we'll get into everything else so that this might move a little quicker for us. Okay, the starters: Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Samson Ebukam in the front four. Linebackers: it's EJ Speed, Shaq Leonard, Zaire Franklin. At cornerback, it's Kenny Moore, Dallas Flowers, Daryl Baker Jr. Starting safeties are Julian Blackman and Rodney Thomas. Okay, and then you think about who are the roster locks behind these guys, the guys that are like definitely making the team anyway. So it's going to be Juju Brents at corner, Jalen Jones and Darius Rush. The 3 rookie corners are on the team. We're carrying 6 cornerbacks, and those are my 6. Nick Cross at safety. I have us taking 4 safeties. Nick Cross makes the 3rd. And after what I saw throughout training camp practices and in the last preseason game, Henry Black looks like the safety that we're probably going to keep to back up Rodney Thomas instead of Rodney Harrison being the other safety that we keep on the roster. Okay, linebacker, Grant Stewart, rock solid to make the team. Segan Alubi, rock solid to make the team. Dio Dingbo, rock solid to make the team. Tommy Ade, I'm pretty sure is rock solid to make the team. Tyquan Lewis, rock solid to make the team. Now, defensive end, Gennard Avery's on the IR for the rest of the season, so he's not going to count as a roster spot, but they'll still have him on the roster somewhere, okay? So we've gone over most of the defensive roster spots. Most of these guys are either starters or roster locks. And there are 2 guys that are kind of up in the air, but I think this is the direction that we're going to end up going, is keeping another guy for the middle of the defensive line, and McTelvin Agam. It just feels like with other players, I've heard other players talk about him in their practice press conferences and seeing what he puts on film. He just feels like a guy that makes sense. Like if DeForest or Grover isn't there, he might be the next man up. So it feels like he's a guy, in my opinion, would be a lock. If I was putting together the team, he's somebody that I would definitely want as a depth piece on the defensive line. Then the other guy's going to be Al-Qadim Muhammad. And I think a lot of that, for me at least, is because of his relationship with so many people on the team, because he was here before. And he's a good player, right? But there's so many guys, and we're going so deep on the defensive line. He falls back a little in depth. But again, relationships matter in the locker room. And if he needed to be on the field, we've seen him make plays before. He's not a world beater at defensive end, but he's a solid depth piece. And we know him, you might as well have him in the building. Okay, so overall, we end up with 5 defensive ends, 4 defensive tackles, 6 linebackers, 6 corners, and 4 safeties. Okay, and this is where we see guys like Taven Bryan and Eric Johnson not make the team. There are going to be some people out there, not a lot, but there are going to be some people not very happy about that. Then you also have guys like Tony Brown and Trevor Denbo that aren't going to make the team. I don't know about you, but I'm happy about that. Both those guys need to get out of here. I think the fact that those guys aren't going to be here anymore means that we're taking a step forward in depth in the secondary, and that's a good thing, right? As long as the rookies are better this year, I honestly think the secondary can be pretty good as long as the boys stay healthy. Okay, so then obviously to finish this up, the specialists, we have Matt Gay for the kicker, And then Rigoberto Sanchez is back this year to punt and do kickoffs, which is amazing news. Love having him back. And then long snapper is Luke Rhodes, one of the best and most consistent long snappers in the NFL. And then the kick returners and punt returners. And then the punt returners are Isaiah McKenzie, Josh Downs. Kick returners, Dallas Flowers, Isaiah McKenzie. Okay, so that's going to wrap up my last 53-man projection. As the roster cuts start happening, I'll try to keep you guys updated as quickly and as much as I possibly can on all the moves that the team is making throughout the week leading up to Tuesday at 4 p.m. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you continue to get notified for any Colts news. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Go Colts.